Welcome back to the United Pubcast. Good morning to everyone in Australia. Good evening to everyone in the UK. Larry, it is a good morning because about 12 hours ago, or not even 12 hours ago, before we went to bed, deadline day started in the worst possible fashion. Firstly, Manchester United were linked to no one. What's absolutely new. Then piled on top of that, Erik Ten Hag comes out in his press conference, pretty much confirms Christian Eriksen's out for the season. Now, I think the accurate report seems to suggest late April, early May. That's out for the season in my book. Fingers crossed we can see Christian Eriksen back in a Man United shirt. So ultimately, before that news, we needed a midfield reinforcement anyway, or anywhere across the pitch, but especially in midfield. Now, ultimately, one of our best midfielders go down. That doubles down in regards to the need to bring in a replacement for Christian Eriksen on deadline day. So we can get into the ins and outs on how much of a panic signing this is. But my good waking up to the arrival of Marcel Sabitzer, which we'll get into all the details in a little bit, in regards to a panic signing on loan, I think in regards to replacing Christian Eriksen, this is about as good as you can get. So I'll say good morning to you, good morning to everyone in the live chat, and talk to me this Wednesday morning Sydney time.
Morning, Tom. It might be too early for a drink, but I'd absolutely raise a toast to Richard Arnold, to Erik Ten Hag, to the scouting team, because this is an astute piece of business. And we'll get into the player and his profile, but like you already kind of touched on, this is the best kind of player that you could ask for, given the circumstances, given the tight purse strings, given that this isn't a permanent transfer, the caliber of player, what we lose with Eriksen and what Sabitzer offers. I think this is honestly the best kind of number 8 you could ask for. I'd even argue we upgrade in some areas, which we will absolutely get into.
I completely agree, and I want to get into that upgrade. And obviously, I think everyone's sort of seen Paul Merson's comments earlier in the day or last night, Sydney time, in regards to Chelsea and United going after Sabitzer. You talk about that in regards to the perfect replacement for Christian Eriksen and the perfect loan day signing, which I completely agree. However, look, I do agree. However, you cast your mind back to Odion Ighalo, and obviously you're not putting Odion Ighalo in the same category as Sabitzer, but we found ourselves as a fan base back in when he came in saying the same thing. Look, it's not ideal, but given the situation we're in, he's the perfect loan day signing. I just think we're trying to convince ourselves back then. Are we in a position now where we're so desperate, we're just trying to convince ourselves we're not seeing the full picture? I don't agree with that, but I'm thinking, it's a tricky position that we're in at the start of the day. Now we're saying, what great bit of business. We can't sort of hide from the fact where we were these sort of couple of hours ago when it was absolute disaster.
No, I don't think we are, and I get what you're trying to get at with the Odion Ighalo comparison. I don't think this is the same. Odion Ighalo was past his peak. He was a player who had performed well for Watford, and then obviously struggled at Watford and then moved to China, and he came to United on the wrong side of 30. Sabitzer is, I believe, 25 years of age. This is a player who's in the prime.
I think he's a bit older than that.
25, 26, 27, he's somewhere in there, right? He is no older than that. He is in the peak of his career. So this is a player who is ready-made. He's playing in a very competitive league, probably a league that transitions to England really well in terms of the Bundesliga in the way they play. And I think he's got, because of that, because he's in his peak, and like you reminded me, RB Leipzig, behind closed doors, COVID, tore Manchester United apart. This guy's a good player. I don't see that. Look, is it a panic signing? Of course it is. But I think any club in this situation would call it a panic signing. I mean, is Cody Gakpo a panic signing for Liverpool? Yeah, he is. They're struggling to make Europe, and they thought we're going to bank on this and hope it turns out well. Happily for us, it obviously isn't going well for him at Liverpool. But this needed to happen, because if United went into the rest of the season without Eriksen, imagine the noise that and the uproar that would come with. And to be honest with you, Tom, if we didn't make this signing, I don't know how confident I'd be with top 4. I think Eriksen is that crucial to the way United play. I don't think we could have ridden this one out.
We talk about panic signings, and obviously Manchester United will be reported as a panic signing. And look, well, we can sit here and agree with aspects of that, but you do mention other clubs, Chelsea or Arsenal, Jorginho. Now, that might prove to be a beneficial signing in terms of potentially getting them across the line and winning them a Premier League title. Who knows? But at the moment, it's definitely a panic signing considering their targets or elsewhere. So
crucial point on this. Panic signing, yes, but it's a loan. So Manchester United have protected themselves. So if it doesn't work out, it can obviously end.
Well, we'll get into the details of that in regards to, look, this still isn't confirmed. It does look like he is at Carrington completing his medical, and it will get done in the next hour or so. Just in regards to that, look out, we have to deal with the cards on the table in terms of the position we're in and the short notice. Yes, just get it over and done in whatever fashion you can, and that looks like it is going to be a loan deal. In regards to, would you like to see a little bit more, or is it a bit of a try before you can buy? Because obviously Paul Merson, look, not that we should be listening to Paul Merson, but he came out a few hours ago saying, look, he doesn't play for Bayern Munich. Why would Man United want him now? If Christian Eriksen was at Bayern Munich, would Christian Eriksen play? Probably not. So I don't think you can criticise anyone for not playing for Bayern Munich, obviously one of the best teams in Europe. But in regards to, would you have liked to see United show a little bit more ambition? And if this is the player that we want, if this player is good enough to replace Christian Eriksen, he must be good enough for Manchester United to go and buy him. I'm just thinking, or do you think it's just the situation where we're in, we wouldn't be able to get that sort of deal done? Let's just bring him in on loan, a bit of a try before you can buy.
I would counter that argument with, I don't believe he was Manchester United's first choice. I think if we go back to the summer, I would imagine he was on a list, and I think he was probably number 3 or number 4 on that list. And I think that's why you're seeing United go in for him now. He's kind of, I want to say, like, in terms of style, he's probably close. He's kind of like a hybrid between Casemiro and Eriksen.
I think very similar to Eriksen in the way he plays, a very technical player, probably a little bit more of a goal threat from my memory and recollection of watching him play. In terms of taking up the same area of the pitch, can play a little bit more advanced, get in the box, can dictate play from a little bit deeper. So I think almost it's that old-fashioned central midfielder, maybe a little bit more energy. Now Christian Eriksen, that's probably his weakness in his game, so it's maybe not too hard to have more energy than Christian Eriksen. But think of a Christian Eriksen with a little bit more bite to his game. Just say good day to George, who is in Manchester, who will be at the game tomorrow, I'm pretty sure. So talk to us about that, George. But been a bit critical of Sabitzer on this channel when we've discussed him before, but he's United player now, so he has my undivided support. Good stuff. What I do like about Sabitzer, regardless of his limitations and his versatility, can also play as a winger up top. Yeah, look, he does sort of offer that goal threat from what I have seen. Obviously, Manchester United, do you remember him from that game against Leipzig? Ed here, good to see you, mate. Hope all is well. Watching Fabrizio, Sky Sports, and the podcast simultaneously. Perfect deadline day. Hope you're enjoying yourself. A bit of an early stream, breakfast before work for us here on the podcast. But Larry, I don't know, understand. I played Football Manager like everyone else. Loan with an option to buy, loan, no option to buy. I don't understand the no option to buy and what that is. And then now someone in the live chat, can you tell me what the legalities behind that is? Because
Tom, I can explain that to you, my friend. Exactly, it's not that difficult.
Okay, so he's a loan with no option to buy. Okay, well, let's say that. Why can't we buy him next season? Why can't we go to Bayern Munich and offer them some transfer money?
We potentially could. But
so we have an option to buy.
Because the thing is, if you're Bayern Munich, I'm going to teach you business acumen 101. If you're Manchester United, it's probably worth about 15 or 20 million pounds in the summer. If he comes to Manchester United on loan, absolutely kills it. You think that's going to be his price? It's going to go up.
I'm not saying a fixed price. I'm just saying the option to go and make it permanent.
But that's what happened. When there's an option to buy, that comes with a fixed amount to buy the player with. And that's why I think Bayern Munich are not hamstringing themselves. And Manchester United, likewise, are not committing themselves. We have to remember that there is a potential ownership change coming, whether that's partially or full ownership change, right? So that's the crucial point. I think that's obviously influencing whether this player comes in permanently or not. The other side of it is, like I said, I imagine that Sabitzer was 2, 3, 4 on Erik ten Hag's list. So if that's the case, then there is a bit of try before you buy. He has to prove himself. And I think even if we got him in, my personal opinion, I still think there should be an upgrade to be had in terms of the starting 11. I don't really see him as the Premiership winning central midfielder that we need. But
you have seen
he would
that
absolutely be a great squad option.
Would you have seen that a few weeks ago and Christian Eriksen being part of it when we were in a title race, Christian Eriksen part of a title winning team?
Well, no, I wouldn't. But that's the thing. I don't see Eriksen even as a title winning midfielder for Manchester United. I think he's absolutely evolved the way we play. And it's funny to say that because I don't think without Eriksen, I think we struggle to make top 4. But as our ambitions and our goals progress, the caliber of player in the 11 also has to progress. And I think if Eriksen is a squad player, if someone like Sabitzer is a squad player, then you're starting to talk about a Premiership winning squad, which we don't have at the moment. That's the reason to go to market. So it'll be really interesting. And look, if he kills it now, then who's to say he doesn't become a Manchester United player? But I think it's a good piece of business for both sides. If he doesn't perform, United aren't locked into anything. If he does perform, Bayern Munich get a bit more bang for their buck.
On a business side of things, what in terms of the limited knowledge we do have Sabitzer and the Bayern Munich situation, what is let's say define kills it in terms of has a good end of the season, we want to keep him as Manchester United fans. What is the type of sort of fee you would be looking for a player? Because I haven't seen any numbers being thrown about there. Is he worth 20 million? Is he worth 80 million? I'm not sure what Bayern Munich value him at. I'm not sure his contract situation. But at the moment, if we were to buy him today instead of a loan deal, how much do you think he is worth?
Yeah, I'd probably say around. Well, he doesn't really. He does play for Bayern Munich, but he hasn't played a lot. He's made 15 appearances so far this season. Not a lot of football, but based on that, you'd have to say he's probably around the 15 to 20 million pound mark. He's not playing a lot of football, but he's a high caliber player. He's very talented, and obviously he can contribute positively. Like I said, though, if he comes into Manchester United, absolutely blitzes it, and we make top 4. Well, then it's a different conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, Rob saying they paid 16 million for him in regards to Bayern Munich. It'll be very interesting to see Bayern Munich.
He's 28, situation. By the way.
Because I knew he was under 30, but I knew he had been around a while. Bayern Munich interested now. Obviously loaned Joao Cancelo, which we'll get into other deadline day deals and sort of the roller coaster or the merry-go-round in regards to transfers around England. Crazy. Chelsea are still absolutely going nuts. So we'll have a bit of a discussion about all those transfers in a little bit. But Bayern Munich to bring Joao Cancelo in and then let Sabitzer go. Interesting times at Bayern Munich. Shout here from Ed. Also, I think FFP counts buy options, and the owners have made it clear that we have no money, so our books will be further imbalanced.
I don't think that's a problem. So I've had a look at this. So the financial fair play rules, so the new rules that came in terms of transfers, wages, and agent fees, a club is allowed to spend up to 70% of its revenue. Manchester United are comfortably below that. But where we're talking about the books, Ed, to your point, mate, it's Manchester United are running at a loss at the moment. They're not profitable, and that's bad for any business. Obviously, we've been profitable for a long period of time.
You talk about rules, though.
Despite the debt.
Are there rules? Rules. Are there rules?
There are rules. There absolutely are rules. But I mean, when you think about
who has to abide by them, really? Look around Europe. Look what's happening at Chelsea. So Manchester City were found guilty.
This is the problem. So with Manchester City, their situation's unique because they use sponsors that are obviously linked, or I would even argue owned by the same owner. They have sponsors that have links to the same owner, which they are now counting as revenue. I mean, if I have a bank account and I transfer so if I have money with the bank and I transfer that money into my Westpac account, does that mean I got that money from somewhere else? I mean, it's all mine. And it's the same principle here. And so, like, my issue is not with the financial fair play rules. It's the upholding of those rules. It's the
that's what I mean. So we look at this and that's what I mean. We look at this and say, we can only get him because of this rule, and so we have to sort of work our way around it. Why do we have to work our way around it? Chelsea's signing people on 10-year contracts to get around it. And I just think
that's what I'm saying. I don't think
I
don't think this is a financial fair play decision. I think it's purely a Manchester United trying to limit spending decision. And if you're the Glazers, any negotiation you have is the big elephant in the room being the 528 million pounds of debt. So if you're the Glazers, you don't want to be adding to that debt because that's going to hurt your negotiation. So unfortunately, this is why we're in the position we're in.
Yeah, definitely. George here, Chelsea getting around FFP by giving their players long contracts. So 96 million for Mudryk over 10 years is a bit over 9 million a year.
But that's John not Silk, how all transfers are paid. It's really up to the clubs.
Talking tennis, John Silk, good to see you, mate. Hopefully enjoyed the Australian Open, obviously on our doorstep a couple of days ago. And Ed, in regards to your point there about City's ownership and the way they're getting around FFP, City got sponsors that are run by the owner's brother. It's a complete mess there, but ultimately they were found guilty of wrongdoing and they were said, okay, continue. I think they threatened to take you away for the court and nothing was done at all. So that is the thing. That's where I look at these financial fair play rules and the restrictions potentially United do have to deal with and think, okay, yeah, try and do the right thing by the book, but ultimately, who's going to punish you? UEFA not going to punish anyone. Now, if they're going to punish someone, look, fat chance will play by United, who knows? But we'll sort of one or two more things around Sabitzer and the deal. And if you are scrolling through Twitter, keep us up to date if there is any breaking news, maybe photos around Carrington, etc., because I'm sure he's there completing his medical. And also do leave a like on the video. So, Larry, any sort of final thoughts on Sabitzer before we sort of have a look around the league and the crazy day that it is a few hours out from deadline day? or deadline moment?
Okay, well, he's definitely arrived at Carrington. There's been a photo of him captured about 20 minutes ago, so that's always good to see. This player walked straight into the starting 11 for me, Tom. I think he might start off the bench in his first appearance, whenever that might be. I imagine it'll be this weekend. But following that, I think you answer this for me. Is he a starting 11 player? Because for me, walks straight in.
Oh, he has to. In terms of, we could weigh up an argument with Christian Eriksen, but ultimately Christian Eriksen's not there. So Sabitzer, in terms of my knowledge of him, definitely would walk in. Now, Fred is performing quite well at the moment, but I think Sabitzer obviously has a little bit more technical ability than Fred. So you'd like to see Casemiro and Sabitzer, and then a sort of a shootout then between Fred and McTominay, depending on what the game needs. If one of those have to come in and replace Sabitzer, I think so. You definitely have not enough options there, but good options considering we started the day with no Sabitzer and no Christian Eriksen. So Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes pick themselves, obviously. Then it'll be a shootout in terms of fitness and what the game needs, because I think we can sit here and say, okay, Sabitzer now plays. That's our middle three: Casemiro, Sabitzer, and Bruno Fernandes. We're still log jammed with games. We still need to rotate. Players are still going to come in and out.
Despite this signing, I absolutely think there is a great opportunity for 3 players currently at Manchester United. 3 youngsters. One of those 3 absolutely have an opportunity here to be part of the squad and contribute to Manchester United's success this season. And those 3 players are, Tom, Sedan Iqbal, Kobe Mainu, Facundo Pellistri. I know Pellistri's played in a wide position when he's come on, but he does play midfield for his country. And I think one of those 3 players, if they take their opportunity, I imagine all 3 will potentially even start. Maybe between Mainu and Iqbal, one of them will start against Reading tomorrow morning. One of those 3 players, you have to take your chance, because I think if you impress against Nottingham Forest, if one of those 3 players take their opportunity, I think they absolutely force their way part of the squad. Because let's not forget, Donny van de Beek got injured. There's an opportunity there for a player to force their way back in here.
On Kobe Mania, and look, I'd like to see him start against Nottingham Forest in the second leg. Are we a little bit too excited as Man United fans? He's 17. Like, I know Erik ten Hag has a youth policy and wants to promote youth. He's 17. He's not 19. He's not 20. He doesn't have 50 professional games under his belt. He is, look, while a prospect, and would love to see nothing more, throw him in the deep end, sink or swim, and I would obviously have full faith that he can do a bit of swimming, but ultimately he's 17. I just think, are we getting a little bit too carried away in terms of, okay, he can take his chance?
I don't think so. I think it's up to him. If he absolutely bosses it and shows he's ready, then, you know, if you're good enough, you're old enough. I think he will be a Manchester United player. It might not be this season is his breakout season. Maybe that's next season. But it can be this season, and that's up to him. The last performance he had in the League Cup, I can't remember who it was against now. Charlton. I never want to accuse a player of going hiding, but he didn't really want to get on the ball, did he? He played like a nervous young player. He kind of did his job, but didn't really want to get too involved. I think that needs to change. But again, he's 17, and I think people really don't put enough credit to how hard it is to play central midfield. If you're a young player, that's the hardest position to make a debut in. Yeah. Like, if you're a winger, you're told, go out there, back yourself, take on a player. You're a striker, go out there, bang in a goal. Okay, that's
where from a 17-year-old, I kind of look. I do agree. I sort of wanted a little bit more from him in the middle, get on the ball, so maybe drive forward, but be a little bit more confident. But ultimately, I could almost flip it the other way and show a little bit more praise towards him in regards to keeping it as simple. Like, he could have been out there trying to impress. Okay, I need to score a goal. I need to get an assist so I can stay in the manager's plans. But ultimately, if Erik ten Hag said, go out there, keep things simple, that's all I need from you today. I don't care about your future. I need a performance today that helps the team. Ultimately, to come in and do that instead of trying to impress too much, ultimately, you could almost see that as positive.
There's keeping it simple, which is what Michael Carrick mastered in his career, which is what Roy Keane mastered in his career. But there's not getting involved. And I think there's a very fine balance, and I think he leaned toward the latter. Again, I don't want to be too critical. He's a very young player, and I think 17, 18, 19... to play in central midfield for Manchester United, because let's forget, against 95% of our opposition, we're expected to dominate the ball. That's a lot of pressure for a young player. So I absolutely excuse him in that with his age. But in saying that, because it's now his debut's gone, this second game, you want to see a little bit more. That's not to say you write him off. Of course not. I think next season we'll see a different player because he'll be a bit more mature, another preseason with the first team, and everything changes. But, if he wants to cement himself as early as this season, the opportunity is there. Kobe Mainu has to take it, though.
Well, the last bit on Sabitzer, obviously scrolling through Twitter, does look like he's at Carrington, and Fabrizio Romano has confirmed the contracts are being signed between the two clubs. So fingers crossed it is made official while we are live, but definitely stay tuned to all the things happening on social media. Before we move on to everything around the league, obviously maybe a few more details will come out when Man United do confirm this, but we play in 24 hours' time against Nottingham Forest. Sabitzer, I assume if this has been made official, or well, actually for the league cover, I'm not sure if it'd be made available in terms of registration. I'm sure he'd be registered as a Man United player, but maybe certain cup competitions have certain rules. So flip of a coin, would you expect him to play tomorrow against Nottingham Forest, or do you think just paperwork will get in the way?
No, I think that's a bit too ambitious. Just giving Brexit and UK politics morons. But Tom, let me give you some statistics on Sabitzer. So if you don't know this player, if you're not familiar with this player, I've got a bit of a breakdown around what his strengths are. And credit to fbref.com, who basically offer data around, like, if you're a scouting player. So what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And I just want to give some of those insights to you and the patrons here. So in terms of tackles, he ranks in the 92nd percentile, and that's in Europe. So if we actually look at his average is 3 tackles per game, 92nd percentile. That's really high. And this is talking about like Champions League, Bundesliga, Premier League, La Liga. So we're talking about the premier competitions in world football. Progressive passes, 96th percentile, averages 4.29 per game. His shots, in terms of midfielders, 99th percentile, 2.38 shots per game. So he offers a goal threat, which United absolutely do need from midfield. In terms of assists, he's in the 77th percentile, but again, he hasn't played a lot of football. So I think if he plays more games, I think you're very likely to see that go up. He's a very creative player, someone who can get on the ball and has a great passing range, it has to be said. The only one that concerns me here is pass completion. He's in the 65th percentile, but when you look at the numbers, 84%. Now, 84% is not horrible, but it depends what role you want him to play. Now, again, you'd assume he'd be a more advanced midfielder rather than sitting with Casemiro. So, I mean, you give him the pass if he's being creative. But where the most key stat there, Tom, that's impressive, that we referred to. There's one more I want to touch on. Touches, 88th percentile, so that's good. He's clearly not afraid to get on the ball. Dribbles completed, 29th percentile. So if you want a player who's going to run through midfield, this probably isn't your guy. He's about key passes, putting it through the lines, much like Eriksen does. So I think he is like for like in that respect. But where the upgrade is on Eriksen, absolutely, has to be defensively. Interception, 64th percentile. Again, not elite, but 1.23 per game. So if he's making one interception per game, that's pretty good. I've barely seen Eriksen make one intercept in his United career so far. And tackles, 92nd percentile. You can't argue with that. Much needed protection. As much as I like Eriksen, does get defensively found out, doesn't he? So I think that's definitely an upgrade for Manchester United.
I think you mentioned in regards to all those stats, and I'll focus on the defensive side of things in regards to intercepts, tackles, and everything. The way I just look at it without the data in front of me is just energy. He's got a little bit more bite to him, and I think Christian Eriksen at times the sort of midfield opposition can sort of run through him a little bit, and that's not. I think in terms of you compare to the previous season, in terms of what Christian Eriksen has brought compared to who the player he is, or he did replace at United in Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba obviously had that energy to sort of go back and forth, but sometimes looked like he chose not to use it. Where Christian Eriksen, I think, gives 100% the whole time, but maybe doesn't have the physical capabilities. Pogba had the capabilities, but sometimes just sort of neglected them. So I think that is where this guy can come in and sort of be quite a similar player to Christian Eriksen and Paul Pogba where they do play, but ultimately have that capability to get up and down and sort of provide that little bit of a bite into the tackle. So that's where I think in terms of it is a bit of a straight swap. Now, ultimately, how's he going to sort of adapt to football in England, life in England? He might hit the ground running and he'll be absolutely perfect to it. He might be, I don't want to say a flop, but he could be one of those. You just never know how these things will work. Fingers crossed Harry Ten Hag has full faith in him, which I'm sure he does. But time will tell. I'd like to see him as quick as possible. Now, I think obviously Fred is probably going to start a little bit ahead of him in regards to the pecking order until we've seen that. Bloody McTominay was ahead of Casemiro if he was performing. At the moment, Fred's performing. Sabitzer's going to have to work his way into the team, and I think that is right. But ultimately, there are so many games and sort of the fixture congestion is there, so he will get his chance very soon. Just in regards to, I do want to touch on all the goings around in regards to the other transfers, but just in regards to when Christian Eriksen was sort of ruled out for the rest of the season, my first instinct, Larry, before trophies, before Carling Cup final, before the end of the season, what position does this put us in? It was the Barcelona tie. I was thinking, oh, hang on. I can't see us beating Barcelona without Eriksen. Now, ultimately, you're feeling towards that, and does the Sabitzer arrival change that opinion?
No, not really. I don't think so. Can I go back though? I do want to touch on your point with Fred. I don't think enough credit is given to Fred. And look, I've been critical of Fred countless times. Well, we've been on this show. But what I will say is this season, there's a more mature performance. And maybe he's been a bit overshadowed by other players who we've seen be so poor but improve so much. Fred's improved this season. I don't think we can discount that.
I don't think he improved. Like Scott McTominay at the start of the season, they're given jobs that they're suited to. For previous season, we're told McTominay and Fred had to do jobs that weren't their game. And I think ultimately when they're put in their positions, they were always sort of 6, 7 out of 10. But ultimately we're told them to come back and be Michael Carrick, and that didn't suit them. That's why they looked 3, 4 out of 10. I think Erik ten Hag sort of respected their limitations and sort of obviously got Casemiro to do that job now. And I just think they're better suited to come in and do what they're more suited to.
Yeah, there's absolutely an element of that. So let's compare Fred and Sabitzer. So if we actually have a look at the statistics, Tom, in terms of tackles, Fred is in the 71st percentile. So obviously there's a big upgrade there. But interceptions, Fred leads the way. Fred's in 86th percentile for interceptions for midfielders in Europe. So, I mean, we can't discount Fred. For blocks, Fred is in the 99th percentile, 2 blocks per game. So, I mean, when you're talking defensively, Fred definitely offers something. It's probably on the ball, though, where, he's not quite there, is he?
Oh yeah, no, I think that's part of Fred's game. That's not to be critical in terms of his strength in regards to, we always talk about big games. Okay, Fred come in, sort of create havoc when the other team has the ball. George here, good deal, lads. The notification woke me up. I knew United will get someone. I wasn't confident. Looking good to see you, George. I wasn't confident we'll get someone. I knew that they'd obviously try in regards to maybe even not so much for Erik ten Hag or football point of views. I think in terms of just the board would try and act in terms of appeasing fans. And that was my first instinct. Okay, who are we bringing in and why are we bringing them in? Now, ultimately, we're going to look at this from a football point of view and say, okay, yes, Sabitzer makes sense football-wise, and obviously it does. But ultimately, it comes back to huge criticisms I still have of the board in regards to how has this deal come about. Sabitzer should have been coming in, if he was the player, should have been coming in a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 1st of January. Ultimately, it's taken a season-ending injury to Christian Eriksen to get this deal over the line. And ultimately, we can sit here and say, oh, good player, we've got him now. We'll welcome Marcel Sabitzer. Ultimately, this highlights so many issues with the board. I know you said Richard Arnold's been doing a good job, and yes, compared to Ed Woodward, I would say so, but we're also being put in this position. Now, ultimately, Richard Arnold had to deal with the problems Ed Woodward sort of created. I understand that. But ultimately, Richard Arnold's isolated window in the summer caused a lot of these issues as to why we have no money. In regards to, he could have bought Anthony for 50 million, bought him for 90 million. I'm just thinking that these deals are so reactionary, while potentially very good deals. A well-run football club has them done before Christian Eriksen gets ruled out for the season.
If you want to blame negotiation, blame John Murtagh, because all the talking...
Richard Arnold, John Murtagh, and that part of the board. I mean,
if Richard Arnold Richard Arnold, I believe, wasn't in charge when John Murtagh was given that director of football position. I believe that was under Ed Woodward's tutelage. So if that's the case, I'm willing to give the CEO a break there. But no, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot structurally still wrong at Manchester United. I think a lot of credit has to go to Erik ten Hag, because most of the players we've seen come in, how much of that is from the scouting network? Because I'm starting to think Erik ten Hag is the scouting network.
I'm putting everything on Erik ten Hag. It almost feels this maybe has a bit of a Ralph Rangnick element to it. Obviously, the Leipzig connection would have been interesting if he has sort of put Sabitzer's name in the hat maybe a few months ago. And obviously a big welcome to Marcel Sabitzer, the first Austrian to represent Manchester United. So congratulations to him and all the Austrian Man United. I believe that is true. All the Austrian Man United fans. Congratulations to you guys. But ultimately, yeah. Okay, Man United I assume we've got over 100 scouts around the world. Erik ten Hag is the one doing the work 9 to 5, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100% agree. And this is where, under a new ownership, it's not simply about taking money in and out of the club. Structurally, Manchester United they could have saved so many millions over the last 10 years, but we've just been absolutely rinsed in the transfer market. Now, this is a good deal because it's a loan, obviously. But if this still, I promise you, if Manchester United went in to make this permanent, it would have been 50 million, guaranteed, because that's
Yeah.
just the way it is. And knowing how we work, we pay. You know, Anthony, all the criticism he's got, I'm telling you, 85% of it is because of the transfer fee. Fans can't help themselves, but you're like, oh, but that doesn't look like 85 million pounds. But you know what? You can blame fans for that. But the reality is, if I buy a fridge and the fridge breaks after 2 weeks, if I buy $5 for that fridge or I pay $5,000 for that fridge, my expectation of the fridge is going to change, right? So why should that be different for any player? You have to blame Manchester United's hierarchy, that they're overpaying for players, and in turn, those players are getting crucified for it.
Yeah, no, it's hard. Look, I never point out that while we criticise in terms of whenever we're criticising a player, I always try. And look, it's very hard, as you say, even subconsciously, it's hard to sort of get rid of a price tag from your head. But ultimately, you do have to, because ultimately, what we watch on the football pitch are not the financials, are not the business side, are not the negotiations. What we watch is a human being with two arms and two legs. Okay, they have no control over the business side of things, and we just have a watch of a footballer, whether they play in Old Trafford or the Sunday league on the sort of a cow paddock sort of pitch. Like, you just have to look at, he's a footballer, forget the business side of things. But it is so hard because the way we invest in it, consume our football, we live and breathe it. We know all the details. We know how much they earn a week. We know how much they earn a month. We know their personal medical history in regards to their injury records. We're so invested in all the players. I think because it's there in the back of our mind, it does cloud our judgment many times. But last point, before we move on to some other Premier League action, because you do mention overspending players, I want to talk about Chelsea in a little sec. But George here, we could have saved 700 million last window on Anthony and Casemiro combined, and we might not have lost 4-0 to Brentford if we did our business. You look back those first two games of the season, if we had these players in before Brighton and Brentford, you take those 6 points, where we are this season, I'm not sure. Who knows? We might have then lost to Liverpool. Who knows? But
if we won those games, maybe we don't get Casemiro, though. So
no, but if Casemiro was in there, if we get Anthony, Eriksen, Sabitzer in before
he
Brighton,
wouldn't have
Brentford,
played time. He would have been benched for Scott McTominay.
Exactly. No, he can get his games like he did at the start of the season. We're blessed to have the Europa League football, so Casemiro could get some minutes under his belt at the start of the season. But Europa League football is for another discussion when we preview the Barcelona match in a few weeks' time. But it's overspending on players, Larry. To sort of wrap up, we'll keep our eye on Twitter if anything breaks officially around Sabitzer. But Jorginho to Arsenal. I haven't seen that Enzo Fernandez. If that has been officially announced with Chelsea, I'm not sure. But oh my God, overspending for players. Look, he's a player. Obviously, did very well at the World Cup. Technical player, young, a bright future. Obviously, good player. Over 100-something million. Now, obviously, Paul Pogba will be reported as more expensive. Harry Maguire will be more expensive. Anthony will be reported as more expensive. This transfer fee will be swept under the carpet in a couple of weeks with Enzo Fernandez. When he has a bad performance, he will never be regarded as a flop in regards to the British transfer record. That's just the way it is. He's not a Manchester United player. But ultimately, the facts are that he will be. It's about 105, 110 million pounds. That's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy off the back of what Chelsea are doing. If it was a one-off signing in the summer, you think, oh, geez, they back this guy, fair play. But ultimately, this is just, I can't get my head around it.
Tom, you know what I can't get my head around? I don't think of Chelsea as a big football club, and it's ultimately why I do not care. I just do not view them as a big football club. I really don't. I just view them as a club with a lot of money, but there's not much there. Like, I'll always feel that way about Chelsea and Manchester City. I
think that's with Chelsea. If Arsenal, say there was a three-way title race, Arsenal, Chelsea, and City, I think a lot of Man United fans just say, "Oh, just give it to Chelsea." Just they won't hurt as much as City or Arsenal.
Yeah, we would, but like look at the amount of money they're splashing, and no one's blinking an eyelid. And the reason they're not blinking an eyelid is because they're irrelevant. That they're not. And this isn't even me being disrespectful. This is just me stating facts. I mean, I love giving Arsenal shit. You know why I like giving Arsenal shit? Care about them. I mean, there's an investment there. There's an emotional investment there. I like it when Man United versus Arsenal. I love it when we beat Arsenal. I got the shits when Arsenal beat us because they're a big football club and there's a rivalry and there's history and there's value in the fan base. What does Chelsea have?
Yeah, no. Look, I
And a
couldn't,
rich Russian
I couldn't agree
who's,
more.
gives Vladimir Putin hand jobs, and then now they've got an American owner who plays FIFA in real life. Like, there's just no investment. I don't even like speaking about them because there's just no method to their madness. Like, what are they even doing? How many first team players are in that squad right now? You know what? I would love to get the opinion of 20 first team players in that squad. Tell me how they're feeling right now.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Okay, Sabitzer, welcome Marcel Sabitzer from Bayern Munich. That's a great bit of business. I was looking straight at Chelsea's door when I was going to bed last night. I was thinking, okay, who's in Chelsea's midfield is going to be a little bit disappointed with their upcoming game time. And I was saying, go into Chelsea and start looking at that situation. Obviously, they let Jorginho go to a rival in Arsenal. So you think, well, if they're letting one go, you'd be willing to bet they'll let two go. So it'll be very interesting on their outgoings and how that, okay, maybe Enzo Fernandez will obviously improve them in regards to quality and all that. And some maybe Chelsea fans can say, "Oh, we'll have very good depth now." Ultimately, depth is one thing, but an unhappy dressing room is another. So it will be interesting how they do play that. Obviously, with Graham Potter in there, I don't know. Look, good coach, good manager. I don't think he's the manager to sort of manage a dressing room like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's a good recipe in Chelsea. But just the last thing here on Chelsea, to continue your point, George here, he'll be on a 10-year contract though. In this financial fair play, okay, the rules don't matter, but the rules are there. There's a bit of a loophole into FFP. People are sort of defending the thing. Actually, it's probably quite smart. It's a nice loophole Todd Bowley's made. Well, it's not if a player flops. If Enzo Fernandez flops after a season, they want to sell him. It's not good business. I just think I can understand the financial benefits of spreading this cost and to sort of balance the books. But ultimately, from a football point of view, if a player doesn't perform, the books go out the window.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the Ukrainian player that they paid a fortune for. I can't say his name. Muda?
Mudryk.
Whatever. Mudryk is like, he looks good, yeah? Like, he's very pacey, he's good dribbler, but he's not the complete product. He's an upgrade on Dan James, right? But I don't think he's quite Rashford, Saka, Mbappe kind of caliber player. He might be one day, but he's not there yet. If he has a bad injury, if he has like a really bad injury, and he loses his pace, mate, he's done. Because he's not the complete package in terms of his skill set. So if he loses his pace, I don't know where that ability is. Now, of course, that can happen to any player. If Marcus Rashford, or God forbid, Mbappe got a bad injury, they wouldn't be the same player either. But and I'm not talking about ACL. I'm talking about when you actually have bone breaks in your leg, very hard to come back from. Luke Shaw struggled for 4 years before he got back to anything near what we're seeing today. So, I mean, no, I think Chelsea's business is absolutely crazy. You know what the frustrating one with Chelsea is, though? Malo Gusto, the right back. He's a good footballer. I wanted United to sign him. Why on earth would you go to Chelsea when Reece James is first choice and he's 23 years old? Why on earth would you go to Chelsea? Like, he clearly doesn't have ambition because he's not going to replace Reece James. And I guarantee you he won't be at Chelsea in 12 months.
Do you think this just goes back to my point made a few weeks ago in regards to a lot of it stemmed around the Mbappe discussion and sort of Barcelona's financial situation? Players and agents are just doing whatever they can to get to the Premier League now. Okay, yeah, you might sit on the bench for a couple of years, but you're going to get paid triple, quadruple, whatever anyone across Europe is going to offer. So people are looking at Chelsea and think, okay, maybe not good for my footballing career and sort of footballing ambitions, but ultimately this is where the money is, and the money is simply going to be over the next 5-10 years on a different level. They're going to be playing a different sport compared to what they're doing on the continent. So in terms of Chelsea, you do look at a footballer's point of view, it'd actually be crazy to go to Chelsea at the moment, but so many are jumping at the opportunity.
I think a lot of these players are immature, young, and that's why I think it's something that's really understated. You got to have a top agent. I think an agent whose interest is in your footballing career rather than how much money can I get out of this player. And it's a fine balance because I guarantee you, I'm sure 95% of football agents right now are looking to make money out of you. Now, yes, there is a business involved and it has to work for both parties, but your agent's primary focus should be what is best for my player's career. If that's not your primary interest, then that player's career might be worth toilet. But the thing is, if I represent Gusto right now and I just got an agent's fee worth £5 million for him, for example, if he takes a step down from Chelsea, which to be honest, he probably will, because he's not going to play a lot of football and he's second fiddle to Reece James. So in 12 or 24 months, when he gets a move to the next club, that agent's not going to be making as much money. That agent is purely interested in how much can I make today. And I think that's why these players, because they're young, and in the society we live in, everyone's money driven. A lot of these players signing for Chelsea are ruining their careers. They really are.
I love that. Look, obviously, I wish everyone the best in their own personal ambitions, but anyone who goes to Chelsea, you don't get those well wishes from me. Someone at Chelsea, though, Mason Mount. Interesting one, obviously not coming in now, but in regards to he's a good player. Just my personal thing, no, and that's not to say he wouldn't be a good addition to Man United, but a lot of fans do seem to think in regards to you're not bringing Mason Mount in and telling, okay, you're going to be the backup to Bruno Fernandes, but ultimately in regards to a bit of squad depth, if one of the academy products doesn't sort of develop the way you want to, he is, I'd say, like a premiership proven player and has shown he can perform on the big stage. But ultimately, would you be looking at a Mason Mount or anyone else from Chelsea in the summer? Because they are going to have to sell.
I don't know where Mason Mount plays in a Manchester United team at the moment. I think that's probably why I are away from that one. Chelsea players we would take. That's a really interesting question. I'd take Reece James. I don't think that's going to happen. I like Diogo Dalot. Don't get me wrong. I think he's improved so much, but Reece James a different level. He's such a good player.
If Sabitzer does very well and Bayern Munich say, no, hang on, we'll have him back and Man United can't afford him. I'm not sure what the Chelsea situation is, but in regards to Kovacic, he's one player I'll take from Chelsea.
Yeah. Kovacic would absolutely add depth to the midfield. I know that there's a lot of deadwood there, isn't there?
They've got too many names. I don't know how I'm not sure how they're going to register all these players. If anyone throw up the Chelsea squad list, I'm not sure how many players can you have it registered or senior players? It's around 25 or 26, 30. I'm not sure, but I'm sure they've signed like 10 players in the last week.
I think 30 is the maximum.
They haven't been selling players, so look, who knows? But before we wrap up, George, I still don't think we can sleep on Frankie de Jong. Look, the Frankie de Jong saga will
that
continue.
That won't go away. I think
that'll be there. And look, it's still a real possibility it could happen. So who knows with that? But
if you look at our midfield currently, sorry to cut you off, Tom. If you look at our midfield currently, let's assume one of Fred or McTominay leave. So that leaves Eriksen, Casemiro, Fred/Scott, Donny van de Beek, Bruno. So we're talking about 5 midfielders. I think in reality, can I be honest with you? I wouldn't be shocked if Fred and McTominay left in the summer. I think that...
I think one leaves.
I think there's a chance both leave. I think it really depends what the new owners bring and what the budget is. Because if you give Eric Ten Hag the option to upgrade both of them, I think he absolutely does.
I think in regards to a financial thing, in regards to, okay, we want to bring players in, okay, Fred becomes a business decision, not a business decision, we need the money, but in regards to balance and numbers, okay, we bring a player in, you got to leave. I think from McTominay's point of view, it's more so, I think, almost like a Harry Maguire situation in terms of he would also want to potentially move on as well. Yeah. Now, obviously, McTominay loves the club, but I think he would potentially see players coming in and try and take that next step where I think at the moment, in regards to a pecking order, Fred is above him. Fred would be simply, okay, someone's coming in to replace Fred, so... It'd be very interesting. Time will tell. Obviously, the contract situation is different with Fred and McTominay. I think Fred only has 1 season left, so we're either going to tie him down to a new deal or cash in. Scott McTominay, I think, still has 2 years left.
You know, we're oversighting as well. Manchester United's midfield is starting to look pretty old. Fred, old in football terms, but Fred's going to be 30 in March. Casemiro is going to be 31 this year. Bruno Fernandes is going to be 29 this year. Eriksen's going to be 31 this year. So you got a lot of players around that 30 mark age group. So I think you're going to absolutely need some young legs to come into that midfield. Now, whether that's a young player internally who gets promoted, very possible. Kobe Mainu sits on the bench most weeks. Whether he kicks on, I guess will be up to him and what he does in pre-season. But there's absolutely still a window there for a number 8. Let me ask you this question, Tom. Do you think this loan does become permanent? Yeah, tell me. Do you see it going?
My hunch when a player comes on loan to Manchester, and I'm going to say the opposite with Weghorst, I'm going to say the opposite with Henrik Larsson, I'm going to say the opposite with Odion Agala. But now looking at the Sabitzer arrival, when he arrives, I think Yeah, I think it is with the view to make him permanent. Now, I think the reason I feel that is because he's obviously a good player. Manchester United will want to add a good player to their squad. Now, if Bayern Munich say, no, he's going to be worth 60 million, that's obviously going to change our opinion of that bit of business. But ultimately, my hunch at the moment is he comes in and fingers crossed he does well. And if that is the case, I think Manchester United want to make that permanent. But then obviously you do sort of make a good point in regards to the makeup of our midfield in terms of age-wise and contract-wise. Maybe it isn't the exact profile of what we want, but we also do have to remember that from the other business side of things, we didn't spend big money on Christian Eriksen. He was a free transfer. Now, not saying throw Christian Eriksen out of the club or anything like that, but ultimately, if we are looking at an upgrade, I'm not saying Sabitzer is an upgrade, I'm not saying Eriksen's better. Time will tell. We'll see how Sabitzer performs. But ultimately, if Sabitzer does hit the ground running and maybe sort of scores a goal in a cup final and we sort of charge on to have a very strong finish to the season, we might be sitting here in May saying, you know what, Sabitzer's twice the player Christian Eriksen is. No, I'm not saying that's the case, but we could be having that discussion. And now, then we could be saying, well, Christian Eriksen free transfer. He's one we can sort of push out the side a little bit. So it'll be very interesting. But ultimately, we have laughed at Liverpool over previous weeks in regards to their midfield situation. When you put all that on paper in regards to Man United's glass houses and all that, we might be able to start looking at our own backyard.
Yeah, I'm really happy this deal's got undone though. As much as I don't like the Glazers, I mean this still had to happen, right? This still had to happen. But regardless, good to see that they've backed the manager with some respect. Because I think in the past, I think they would have basically said to Ten Hag, you know what? Sorry, make it happen.
Georgie, on this point, in regards to Bayern, sort of wouldn't be keen on making this a permanent deal. The only look, I understand if he's a good player, why would you want to sell him? But ultimately, the first name in the start of this transfer window, or not start of the transfer window, but the last couple of weeks, in regards to a loan player to come in and replace Christian Eriksen or a player like that, was Gravenberch. In terms of, okay, Ten Hag has a relationship with him, but Bayern Munich will firm, no, this player's not leaving on loan. Now, he's the one who hasn't really been playing for Bayern Munich, but ultimately they have let one of those players go. So in regards to saying Bayern Munich won't sell him, well, the first step is letting him go in the club in the first place. If he's that key and that crucial, he's not a 22-year-old player. Okay, loan a player out to get some more game time. He's in a player in his prime of his career. If you let him out on loan, well, he's not good enough to help you at the moment. So I'm just thinking that, in my opinion, and look, time will tell, performances will be the main telling point. But ultimately, I think there is a possibility that we can make this deal permanent. But again, he has to make that happen. If he doesn't perform, I'm going to change my opinion quick smart.
Absolutely. No, exactly. If he performs, who knows? But I would think, if I was a betting man now, I don't see it being permanent. Even if he performs, I just think United will look to, again, back to the age profile. This player's 28. He's going to be 29 soon. I just mentioned all the players who are 29, 30, 31 in our squad. I think you need a player probably around the 22 to 25 mark. I think that's where United need to be making a signing. Otherwise, we're going to have a similar problem to what we had when Fergie retired and have a retirement village for Manchester United. So the balance has to be right.
I'm just having a last sort of bit of a scroll through Fabrizio Romano's Twitter page. He's going, Chelsea here will try until the end for Enzo Fernandez. Meeting still ongoing, no medical yet. It will be completed in Portugal if the two clubs are able to reach a full agreement.
I hope they agree a transfer fee and then he fails his medical.
Cedric Suarez has gone to Fulham on loan from Arsenal. So Arsenal, look, he hasn't been playing for Arsenal, but ultimately, I think in a title-winning team, you get an injury or something. Now, again, I don't think he has been playing, but I don't think you really want to be so-called weakening your squad there. But ultimately, it's probably not too much sleep lost at Fulham. So Man United buying finalising the contracts. Bournemouth have signed a player for 30 million euros, which is crazy. My big story from today: Hector Bellerin is 27 years old. I thought he was 37.
He's been around a long time, but no, he's young. He made his debut really young. I think he debuted at 18.
I was shocked. He's gone somewhere. I don't know where he's gone. I think he might have gone somewhere in Portugal. Might be Sporting Lisbon. Maybe someone in the chat can correct me. But Hector Bellerin has moved on from wherever he was. I thought he was like late 30s.
No. He's a young player, but his career has fallen off big time. I got to say, like when I saw him break into the Arsenal side, I thought, this guy's got everything to be one of the best right backs in the world.
I think he was strongly linked. I think Antonio Valencia was our right back for a while, and there was strongly when Arsenal was sort of falling down the table. We think, okay, well, he's going to go on to better things. Or he's always linked with Barcelona. Yeah. I think for a time he was linked as United's new right back.
Yeah, he was, and he had everything, and then he had a really bad injury. He decided to become a vegan, and it all just fell off from there.
Well, where it really fell off, he couldn't take a throw. I remember once there was a period, I'm sure all of us, in terms of one of the best sort of footballing times, it was a tough time for everyone in regards to our lives, but in regards to COVID, it was a great time for football on YouTube. We could sit down and watch Arsenal Fan TV and their watch-alongs, and that was prime Arsenal in regards to their fall. And my God, you watch the highlights of those watch-alongs, every 2 seconds Hector Bellerin was doing a foul throw. There was once he did 3 foul throws in one football match. That was crazy. So that's why my sort of lasting impression of Hector Bellerin, but fair play to him. Hopefully he gets over his injuries and has a good, strong end to his career. But Humphrey, good to see you, mate. What a great signing for Manchester United on Sabitzer. We completely agree. So do leave a like on the video if you are happy with the Sabitzer arrival. We're closing in on 1,500 subscribers. So if you are new and you are in the chat, please do hit that subscribe button. That'll be fantastic. And Larry, any other sort of transfer news or scrolling through Twitter, anything sort of spring to mind before we wrap up and start the working day?
We are 8 subs away from 1,500. Can we hit that before the end of this video? 8 subs away.
Well, we'll keep going. I'm in no rush to get to work, and I obviously much prefer Manchester United discussion. So keep everything going in the live chat. In regards to any news is popping up, I assume maybe around the turn of the hour there could be an official thing, but ultimately that's more so in regards to Monday to Friday in terms of how they sort of schedule tweets and schedule announcements. Maybe the chaotic nature of transfer deadline day could come out at any time. So we'll stay live for a little bit, but any other sort of things tickle your fancy, Larry?
Martial and Sancho are back. Big news coming out of Ten Hag. That looks like they'll both feature tomorrow. And Martial was in my starting 11 from memory, Tom. You had Alenga as your starting striker. Are you sticking with that? I think the Frenchman maybe starts. What do you think?
Oh, it's good to have him back in regards to, again, I look at this game in regards to not a real sort of tactical thing in regards to, I need to see a performance. I want to see us play like this. I think this is literally just about getting people through minutes, either resting them or giving them the minutes through the 90 minutes. So I would look at it in regards to Rafael Varane at the back and Martinez given 45 minutes each, or Maguire off at halftime, Varane 45 minutes. I'll be looking at the same thing up front with Anthony Elanga. And, well, you look at Anthony Elanga's future. His name is still potentially up in the air. I'm not sure if anything has been confirmed with any departures around him. But ultimately, Martial and Elanga, I'll split at 45 minutes because you don't want to throw Martial in for 90 minutes and him break down again. So you do need to manage that return quite delicately, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right. Can I ask you this? Because, look, Stephen Howson's been on this podcast before, and we're friends of Stephen Howson and the boys at Paddock. Howson obviously isn't a fan of Martial, and he's mentioned that he thinks Wout Weghorst is first choice. What's your stance on Wout Weghorst? Do you think he is first choice, or do you think
His first choice now. He's first choice now because he's fit and available. In regards to if the way Eric Ten Hag wants to play, I think Anthony Martial has provided us with a good platform to play very good football this season. I think a little bit better than Wout Weghorst has done. That's not to criticise Weghorst, just a different player. So ultimately, I think if Martial is fit and firing, he's better for the team. But ultimately, we went back to so much of the Ronaldo discussion in previous sort of weeks in terms of, okay, you can have better football, but if he's not available, you do need to choose the availability. There's no point giving Martial an hour in this game if he's not going to be ready in the next game. You might as well give Weghorst that hour to keep him sharp, sort of thing. So that is a balancing act Eric Ten Hag does have to deal with. You can't just play Martial if he's not going to be ready for next week. You do need to give Weghorst that sort of consistency and that confidence. So ultimately, I think Martial is first choice over Weghorst. But I wouldn't say it's a good problem to have because we do need sort of better quality and depth than what we have at the moment, especially in regards to guaranteeing of goals compared to what Martial and Weghorst sort of can guarantee us. So ultimately, we do need a little bit better. But considering the way we are playing and the mood around Carrington at the moment, I would say it's a good problem to have in regards to, okay, if Martial's not performing, okay, you can throw Weghorst in. If Martial is performing, well, you have a very good player performing. So time will tell. I think Martial is first choice, but ultimately, as I say, he's not at the moment because Weghorst is fit.
All right, I got a question for you. Let's go back on the theme of transfers and get your comments in. I want to see if we're on the same wavelength here. Tom, name one player, and for those in the comments, name one player who needs to have a strong second half to the season. Because if we're going to start casting our eyes to the summer, I think that there are a few players that are probably on the periphery where if they don't have a big second half of the season, they're going to get sold in the summer. Give us one player in the current United squad who needs to have a massive second half to the season. Otherwise, they risk getting sold in the summer. Who's that player?
I think there's a lot of players, and I think that is a good sort of deal, a good sort of notion to have in regards to Manchester United's future. I think Scott McTominay, especially in regards to Christian Eriksen's injury, I think a spot opens up there in regards to getting potentially more minutes. Obviously, now Sabitzer comes in, but obviously there is a spot there with Christian Eriksen and Donny van der Beek's injury in regards to squad rotation. Scott McTominay will get his chance. He needs to take it because ultimately he has fallen I wouldn't say way down the pecking order, but other players have taken their steps above him in regards to Fred, and obviously Kobbie Mainoo is now sort of in the mix. I'm not saying Mainoo's above him in the pecking order, but he does need to, if he wants his future to be at Manchester United, he could see these names coming in and see first-team football elsewhere. That's potentially a situation, but in regards to McTominay wanting to stay, he would need an improvement. Wan-Bissaka, I still think you do need to look at his situation in regards to Diogo Dalot, his first choice when he comes back. Wan-Bissaka, if he has a bad end of the season, our opinion is going to change in regards to his suitability to Man United. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case. I hope it's not the case, but I still think he needs a sort of good finish. And ultimately, Maguire and Lindelof, but again, I put that more down to their personal ambitions in regards to, I think at the moment, you give Erik ten Hag the decision to keep one as third or fourth choice centre-back. I think you keep one as like Harry Maguire or Victor Lindelof as your third or fourth choice is fine. What happens with Harry Maguire, the situation there is the baggage. He's Manchester United's captain. He's England's international. He's worth £80 million. Is that what you want on the bench? Ideally, that's not the case of what you want on the bench. So that is where Scott McTominay, Harry Maguire, so much of their futures, I think Erik ten Hag will say, yep, I'm happy to keep you if you're happy to play 4 or 5 games a season. I don't want to play you that often. So if their personal ambition gets in the way, that which it should, maybe their future is away from Man United. In the front area of the pitch, your name hasn't really been thrown out there, Jadon Sancho. Huge end of the season for him. I'll throw that to you. In regards to Sancho, obviously it looks like he could potentially be back against Nottingham Forest, but do you need to see obviously we need to see an improvement in Jadon Sancho, but for his future, do you need to see an immediate upturn, or do you think Erik ten Hag has made a decision that Sancho is part of the future? He's just going to be patient.
Sancho is an interesting one. I think because it's catch-22. Because Ten Hag has pulled him right out of the squad, because he's had one-on-one training, been sent to Holland, apparently done some sort of therapy, had some own personal challenges away, because he's dragged him out of the squad, unfortunately, there is going to be the expectation of, all right, well, he's been given 3 months off. He needs to come back firing. So if he doesn't, while I don't think in Erik ten Hag's mind there's a doubt, I think there will be a doubt from Manchester United fans. And ultimately that pressure might come back to bite. The problem with Sancho is while he looked good at times last season, didn't really put it together. And even this season, he scored a goal here and there, but never really performed. His stamina hasn't looked good, has it? Like he's never looked fit to play 90 minutes in a Manchester United shirt. So I think the biggest thing and the most pleasing thing for Sancho, he does look leaner. So I'm wondering, has he gotten rid of the little bit of timber he might have had, trimmed down, gotten himself super fit, and is he ready to fire? Look, I think unless he absolutely stinks up the joint, I think he is a United player next season. But in saying that, if he doesn't chip in with a few assists and goals, there definitely will be pressure. It'll be 50-50.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, fingers crossed he does play against Forest this time tomorrow, and the Manchester United the fans can get behind him. I think there will be I think he maybe comes off the bench and you maybe see that sort of roar from the sort of crowd, which would be a good sort of confidence boost for him. So fingers crossed we can see that. But it just about on an hour. I think we should wrap up there. In regards to, it's going to be a short video today on Sabitzer and welcoming him to Manchester United, but it hasn't been made official. But I'm sure maybe tonight after work, because we are about to go to work, it's 8:45 a.m. here in Sydney. Maybe we'll do a little bit on Sabitzer tonight, obviously before Manchester United do play Forest. So enjoyed that chat. Welcome to Manchester United, Marcel Sabitzer, on loan even for a short time, but sort of very pleased for your arrival to replace Christian Eriksen. Sad news to wake up to in regards to Christian Eriksen being out for the season, but do appreciate everyone joining us for a bit of breakfast and Man United chat. In the live comments, do appreciate that. Please do leave a like on the video. And as said, we are a few subscribers away from 1,500. So if you are happy with Marcel Sabitzer and you are new, click that button. And Larry, I'll chat to you in a bit.
Pleasure, mate. Always great. Cheers to everyone who's tuned in. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Catch you later. Bye.